To get started with DocuSign, you're always going to start in Command. So we're going to create what's called a DocuSign room, but we want to do that from Command and not directly from DocuSign because that's going to make everything easier when it's time to submit your file for review, and it keeps everything connected to Command. So if you start in DocuSign, there's not a way to go back and reconnect it. So what you always want to do is have your opportunity created. So I'm in the Opportunities app in Command. That's the handshake icon on the left side. And I'm going to click Create Opportunity. So I'm going to create my opportunity. I want to select my opportunity type. So that could be listing or buyer. So for this example, I will do a listing one, but just know that the process is the same for buyers. And then I'm going to choose my client. So I'm in Lily's account, so I'm going to use myself as the seller. Then I can name my opportunity. Since it's a listing and I know what the address might be, I'm going to add the address to the opportunity name. This will just help me when trying to find it later. I have a couple different ways I can search for it. And if there was a co-seller, I could add them here as well. And then if I know what the estimated list price is, I could go ahead and put that in. And if it's a buyer, if you know their budget, you can go ahead and put that in as well. So depending on where you're at with the client would depend on if you might know these things or not right now. So I'm creating this opportunity as if we are preparing for a listing appointment or a buyer appointment. But just know that you want to create your opportunity as soon as the person gives you some type of intent to do business within the next year. So even if they're a little further out, you want to create this opportunity. And then when it's time for you to get any forms signed, you'll be able to have get your DocuSign room ready. So I'm going to put 3% commission. And if that ended up changing for any reason, you can change it later. And then I'm going to choose my phase. So right now it's appointment because we are preparing for that listing appointment. So maybe I'll say it is scheduled, and then I will create. So here at this point, I'm just wanting to go to DocuSign and start preparing my documents. So I'm going to go to documents right here. And then I'm going to start a transaction on the right side. Now, if you know already what type of listing or buyer transaction this will be, you can go ahead and choose your checklist type on the left. So you would choose what type of listing or what type of buyer opportunity it is. So I would click on Tennessee residential listing. If you aren't sure yet, if maybe it's just a buyer opportunity and you're simply getting a buyer rep signed, you don't have to check that or choose that checklist just yet. You can wait until you're actually about to write an offer to select that checklist. So then I'm going to start a transaction on the right. Typically, you will just have DocuSign show up. I just still have .loop connected from when we had that before, but normally you won't have a drop-down menu. If you just have DocuSign connected, you'll just be clicking that start a transaction one, and that will create a DocuSign room. So if you do have a drop-down menu, then you'll simply choose DocuSign in it. This is going to create my room, which is where all the documents are managed, filled out, sent for signature, stored, all the things. So these checklists populated because I chose a checklist in Command already. So I chose a Tennessee residential listing file. And so it brought in all the checklists for listing, sales, and closing file in here for me so that I have those for as I go through the transaction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first go to the details tab on the left, top left, because this is helpful if you are going to fill out things like the address, if you already know that, or any information for the client. So I'm going to click the blue edit button. And over here, since it's a listing, I'm preparing the paperwork, so I already know what that address might be. I'm going to fill that out. This part, of course, can come later for a buyer. You don't want to fill this out until you know the property address that they're writing up the offer on. So all of these are going to map to my DocuSign forms. So the awesome thing about DocuSign is that it's got something called field mapping. So anywhere that the address goes on a form, it's going to map it from here or from the form. So even if I just typed it once on the listing agreement, it will map it to every document that needs the address on it. So that's super helpful and helps you avoid a lot of double data entry. So I'm going to just answer all of the questions about that address. I'll put the year built because I know this goes on the checklist. So I'll just choose a year. And then you can fill out any other details through here. Most of these you won't have right now in the beginning, so you can kind of fill them out as you go. And the right side is going to have the people involved in the transaction. So you'll notice that I selected myself as the seller in command, and it brought me in here, brought my name and my email address. So that was from my contact record. So I could go ahead and fill out anything else on here as well for the client that I'm representing, whether that be the seller or the buyer. Phone number, address, things like that, anything that might go on to a form, I can fill out here. And then same thing for seller two, if there was a seller two. And if I had forgotten to add them or did not know and I needed to add them now, I could add them here, or I can also go back in command and add them and then sync it to DocuSign. So I don't have to update it twice, but it will update it in both places for me by just doing it one time. And then below that, you'll see listing agent one. So that's where your information will come in. Now, if this is a buyer opportunity, instead, you'll scroll further and you will see buyer one, buyer two, and then buying agent. And your information will appear as the buyer agent one right here. So just this is all based on the opportunity type that you've chosen is where it will bring it in. So go to whichever place has your information based on the type of opportunity you're doing. So I'm on here. And of course, I'm signed in as Lily, so I can have forms access. So it's got her name, it's got the office number, it's got email. Now, company name, we do need to change this to KW Cleveland Keller Williams. We shouldn't always have to do this, but for now, this is how we have to change it in here, and hopefully we will get that where it fills in correctly in here, but this is how it needs to be on the forms. Our new address is in here as well with city, state, country, zip code, all the things. So that means that any form that's going to require that information, it's going to pre-fill it for you. So that can be super helpful. So once you've done all that, then you'll click the blue Save button. And that updates the room. So now we need to get some documents prepared. So I'm going to click Documents in the top left. And I'm going to click the blue Add button and DocuSign Forms. So when I go to add my forms, over on the left side, you'll notice I have two options. I have groups, and then below that I have libraries. So we create what's called forms groups that allow you to easily add a group of forms that are required for a specific type of transaction, just to make everything quicker for you. And then if you need anything outside of that, you can access whatever libraries you need to down here. So most commonly, the Tennessee Association of Realtors Library of Forms, you'll click that. This has everything in it, okay? So I'm gonna choose the forms group that corresponds with the type of transaction I'm doing. So just a Tennessee residential listing. And then you'll see everything populate here. I can click this checkbox to the left of the word name, and that will select all. The listing file checklist pre-populated in there because I had selected a checklist in command. So if you had not selected a checklist yet in command, because you weren't sure, then it will not say in use on whatever checklist you're selecting. You'll be able to select it here to add it to the room. So in this example of a listing, of course, I don't need both a property condition disclosure and exemption. I want to keep just the one I need. So I'm going to uncheck the exemption for this example. So same thing with any of these forms groups, feel free to uncheck what you don't need. Most of the time you do need pretty much all of the documents, but in a case like this, we don't need these two. So I'm going to now add selected, and that's going to add them to the room. Now, you can create folders in DocuSign, so I recommend doing that to kind of keep it organized. So you can always click on actions in the top right and create a folder for, say, your listing documents, contract documents, things like that. You may want to wait until they come back signed though to create that folder, but you will be able to keep all those organized. So I'm going to start with my listing agreement, because as I'm looking at these forms, my broker fee addendum, I don't need to fill anything out on. It's just a form that the client is going to sign. And then I have my checklists here. Now I do want to look at that listing file checklist first. So let's open that up. The checklists are super important because they're going to help you just make sure that you stay on track and you have everything you need before submitting your file to the office. So you'll see that it pre-filled some information up here from my details section. And then I can fill out any remaining details that maybe I didn't put in the details tab or that I wasn't sure of at the time. And then as you're going through the transaction, you can check these boxes off that after you've done everything. So right now, of course, I don't need to check them off, but this will help me make sure that I have everything whenever I am done. And then like if there's a referral due, yes or no, things like that. These are things you'll also put on the commissions in Command as well, but this is a good place to kind of help you remember to do that. And then if you've made any changes, you'll make sure to click this yellow save and close button. So from here, I want to start filling out my forms. And mostly, most of the work is going to be in, say, the listing agreement, or in a buyer one, maybe the buyer rep and the contract. A lot of these other ones have mostly pre-filled information like address and things like that, or simply don't have any text boxes on them at all. But we're going to go through each of them to kind of talk about that. So I'm going to open up my listing agreement. You would do the same. Say you're doing a buyer rep. So you would open that up. And you will see that a lot of information is pre-filled here for me. And what I need to do is I just need to start with my first like empty box that I didn't have anything on and just start typing in it. So let's say I put the address here, and I could have put this address of owner or seller in the details tab. Since I'm putting it here, it will actually map back there. And so if it needed to go anywhere else, it would be saved there. And I'll just continue, and I can tab through the form for each box. You can also scroll. You'll just see they're all tabbed. And when you hover over them, it shows you the mapping. So basically, if any of these fields are on any other forms, they will map. So you'll just go through your forms and fill everything out. You will notice that it's blank at the bottom where your name should go, and that there's not a box to type in. Your name will appear here when you do one of two things. You either download the form as a PDF to your computer, so if you were going to print it to take it to be signed, or the second and the most common is when you put it in an envelope to send it for signature to the client. So you're going to do e-signature, your name will appear there. So you do not need to worry about that at all. But I like to point it out because we know that that shouldn't be blank. So it will not be blank when you send it to your client. So you will continue through and you will just fill out the whole document. Once you get to the bottom, you will see the signature page. And what I want you to notice is there's not going to be signature blocks on here. Those also appear when you go to the envelope and you choose your recipients that are going to receive these documents to sign. So don't be alarmed by that either. So once you have filled everything out on your document, you're going to save and close. And then you're going to continue on. So with something like the property condition disclosure, I'm going to open that up and show you. This is set up for the seller to specifically be able to complete all those boxes and fields. So you will notice that you only have a couple boxes that are editable for you here. And it looks like you can't do anything with these other boxes. And that's because you as the agent shouldn't be doing that. That is for the seller to fill out. And so once we put it in the envelope to send it to the seller, all of the boxes for these check boxes will appear. So no, you do not have to add them manually. As long as you follow my instructions about using pre-tagged roles that we will get to, then you will be good to go. So what you need to fill out is awesome because it's already mapped from the DocuSign Details tab. So it was the address and name at the top, and then the address down here. And again, these signature boxes will appear when we go to the envelope. So I can save and close, but I didn't really make any changes. So I'm just going to click the X in the top right. The confirmation of agency, I'll need to open that up and I'll need to check a box. You'll notice everything else is pre-filled as well. So over here, I have the address, seller name, licensee name. Make sure to check my box. Remember, it's always going to be designated agent, regardless of who you're representing. If you are representing a client, you are the designated agent. It will not be agent for the seller or agent for the buyer. Now, of course, if you're on both sides, that will be, there will be different options that you might use, but make sure you are always using designated agent if you are representing them. And then with company name at the bottom already filled out for us. So I'm going to save and close. And then the rest that's left for a listing are just a couple disclosures here. So disclaimer notice, wire fraud, and COVID. 3 forms that I actually don't have to fill anything out on. The disclaimer notice doesn't have any boxes on it. No text boxes for me to fill out. So truthfully, most of the time you don't even have to open it before you send it for signature. I'm just opening it to show you that it just goes down to a signature box. So same thing with wire fraud. And then with COVID, the company name is the only thing that has to be filled out. And again, that's mapped from the details tab whenever I open it up. So you'll see that it already has the company name filled out. Now, of course, if you are doing a buyer opportunity, then you'll have a little bit of different forms in here and you'll be working with PDFs from the other agent. So for those other buyer related forms that you have in here, like importance of inspections, water supply, those things, just open those and make sure that everything is there. Those will still have other things that map as well, like the address. And then for details about working with those PDFs from the other agent, I have a separate video for that that will help walk you through how to make those interactive in DocuSign and add signatures. So at this point, we are actually ready to send for signature. So I am going to send the property condition disclosure separately than all the other documents because I want to give the seller the opportunity to fill all that out. And I don't want it to get mixed up with a bunch of other documents that they're just signing because it's really easy for them to just skip over it and not fill anything out. So I'm going to select that document. And up here at the top in my action icons, I'm going to click the pen. So this is going to create my envelope. Couple tips: you want to rename your envelope always. Just giving a little bit of information about what you're sending because it's going to be something that just you see, but will help you stay organized because you'll have a lot of envelopes over the course of a transaction. So I might just name this property condition disclosure. And then because I selected it in the room, it already appears here. But if I needed to add anything else, I can click room docs right here and add documents directly from the room. So what we did was actually a little shortcut that I like to do, just to go ahead and have the documents appear. Now, the most important thing that you need to understand in DocuSign is about recipients. And that is right here when you click add recipients, pre-tagged roles. When this is an option, you always want to use it. It's always going to show up for any DocuSign forms that you generate. So when you won't see it is basically when you're working with forms from another agent. So just a PDF. There's no pre-tagged roles on those because it's a flat PDF from another system. But a DocuSign form is going to have pre-tagged roles for each person that signs. So when I click that, it's going to give me the options. So I would do seller 1, and if there was a seller 2, I would select them. And then on the right, I'll choose who that is. So I am the seller in this scenario. So I'm going to then add selected. And that puts my recipients in the envelope. So if there were 2 sellers, they would show below here. And just for an example, I'm going to go back and add seller 2 and just choose someone in here right now, because I want to explain why when you are working specifically with the property condition disclosure, if you have a seller 1 and a seller 2, you want to enact what's called signing order over here. So on the left, there's a 1 and a 1, and that means both of these people are going to get it at the same time. Generally speaking, that's perfectly fine and preferable, but with the property condition disclosure, all of the boxes are going to be assigned to seller 1, so you want them to receive it first. So I'm going to change seller 2 to not receive the document until it has been signed. And that's because I don't want seller 2 to get it and sign a blank disclosure. I want them to sign acknowledging everything that has been filled out. So that's also important to know when you are working with a listing and that property condition disclosure, that you are putting the person that is going to fill it out as seller 1. So maybe talk that over with your client. If they're not going to sit together and fill it out, and it's just one of them that might be answering a lot of those questions, then you want to find out who that person is going to be so that you can assign these correctly. This will automatically put them as needs to sign. And that also means if they need to fill anything out, they can fill it out. The other options are things like receives a copy if you want somebody to get a PDF. It's also important to know everybody that's part of a DocuSign envelope will receive PDF copies automatically when the envelope is completed. So you never have to manually send your client copies of things they've signed. DocuSign will actually do that through the envelope automatically, and there's nothing specific you have to do to make that happen. So then I'm going to go down to my email subject, and I like to just leave it as please DocuSign and then just put what they're signing. That way, if you were to tell them, hey, I just sent over the property condition disclosure, they get an email that tells them, hey, there's action required. And this is that form or that group of forms that they just mentioned to me. So then I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And this is going to take you to where you'll see a preview of the document. And you will now see that all of those text boxes and check boxes have appeared here that they weren't there before. And then of course, there's the name at the bottom. So these are all yellow. If you look in the top left, yellow is me, which is seller 1. And I'll click here, and blue is going to be seller 2. So the blue, they would be blue if they were assigned to that person. And so that tells you who they're assigned to. It also does that with their signature. So if I scroll to the very bottom, then you'll see the signatures here and the date sign boxes, and they correspond with the colors in the top left. You can also see the document on the right. If you easily needed to just skip to a specific page, you could do that over here. So then when you are ready to send the document, which we don't need to do anything else to this one, you can simply hit send. So once you have sent your envelope, it will take you back to your envelope screen here, and you'll see that the envelope is waiting for others. So then once your client signs it, it will say the envelope is completed. So I have gone in to my email and just signed this document. So I'm going to refresh it and show you what it looks like when it is completed. So now I have a completed document. So once the documents have been signed and the full envelope is completed, so that means everybody that's been a recipient has taken action on it, they will appear in the Documents tab. So you'll go to Documents tab and you're going to see 2 new things. The first thing is a PDF that is named certification. So it'll say certification and then however you had the envelope named. So these certifications just certify the integrity of that e-signature. So if ever there is any reason that you have to, maybe go to court or something like that regarding e-signature, you have these certifications in here that certify like the IP address that it was signed at and everything like that. And then if I'll also scroll down, I'll notice I now have a signed version of the property condition disclosure. So it has a green checkbox that says signed. And then on the right side, it actually says signed after the document. So it indicates it in two places. And you'll notice I do still have the original. So DocuSign does maintain the original documents. So what I like to do is as I go, I like to just archive to kind of keep it cleaned up so that you don't feel as overwhelmed by like a bunch of documents when you come in here. So, and anything that you archive, you can always get back. So this is not the same as deleting. So that's why this is helpful, is if you archive, it is still there if you need it, but it's not in your main Room Docs page. So I am going to archive the original now, and then also the certification, because if I ever need that, I can grab it from my archives. So I'll come up here to my action icons and I'll click archive. And just so you know, if you ever need to obtain an archived document, all you're going to do is over here on the top left, where it says active documents, you're going to click that. You can change that to archived or all, and that will merge all of them. So I would keep it on active typically. If you need to grab an archived one and unarchive it, you just simply go here. So now that we have that, we're going to send our second envelope with the remaining listing documents. So of course, if you're working with a contract, sometimes you're maybe working in an envelope with just that purchase and sell agreement, maybe associated documents, and then maybe you have a separate envelope with all of the documents that just the buyer signs. So you'll have multiple envelopes by the end of a transaction. That's very normal. And you could send one document in an envelope or you could send a bunch. So I'm going to select my listing agreement, confirmation of agency, disclaimer, wire fraud, COVID, and my broker fee addendum. So basically all my remaining documents. And I'm going to come up to the top and click create envelope. So once I create the envelope, I'm going to name the envelope. So I have please DocuSign. So I'm going to just put listing documents. You name it, whatever is helpful for you that would help you remember it. And then have all my documents here. If I miss something, I can always click Room Docs to add it. And then on my recipients, again, I've got pre-tagged roles because these are DocuSign forms. So I'm going to use those. So this time I have a little more options on here, but still, I just need my seller 1. I was just using seller 2 in the last one just to kind of show an example. But in this case, we're going to treat it as I just have one seller. And then I'm going to do listing agent. If ever you see both listing agent and listing broker or buyer agent and buyer broker, always use the one that says agent. That's tagged on the majority of the forms. The broker version is only tagged on a few specific ones. So always use the one that says agent. Then on the right, I'm going to choose who those roles are. And then I'm going to add selected. So here it's going to put those people in the envelope. And then I have them just receiving it at the same time. I don't need to put in any signing order really on this one. And then I'll do my email subject. Again, I'm going to leave please DocuSign, but I'm going to say listing documents. So if I tell the client, I just sent over the listing documents, they see that email that says that in the subject, and they see that there's action required by them because it says please DocuSign. Then I'll click my yellow next button in the top right. This will take me to the same place as before. So it's going to show me all of the documents that I have in the envelope. And if I needed to add anything to them, I could do that. But since I'm using the pre-tagged roles, I really don't need to. You'll see over on the right, as I open like each document, there's the two tabs, so the yellow and blue. And I can always look in the top left, and yellow now is the listing agent and blue is seller one. So the colors aren't always equal to the same role. It's just whoever's put in the envelope first, I think. So it's just really helping you differentiate between both roles. So if I switch over to seller one, everything will be blue. So if I needed to add any additional fields. So that's especially helpful if you're working with PDFs from the other agent for a contract. You'll be using these fields over here. So I do have a separate video that's all about working with PDFs, making them interactive. So feel free to watch that to see that process. So I can expand each of these if I need to, but I know that everything's there because I'm using those pre-tagged roles. And then what you'll also notice is that everything you filled out in the room, now those fields are not interactive. So that's why it's important to fill out your documents in the documents tab of the room. So fill everything out before you bring them into an envelope. If you got to this point and you realized that you had missed something, you can always use the fields on the left to add that in. Worst case, if it was just like one box or something like that. But if it was a bunch, I would back out and go back to the documents tab and complete the form and then come here. So once everything is ready, just like last time, I will hit the send button. This will send the documents. And it will take me back to my envelopes tab. And the difference here is, since these forms maybe have you signing, whether you're doing a listing or if you are working with any contract documents, if you're signing them, your envelope will say needs my signature, and you can actually sign right here within DocuSign. So I'll click that. It'll show me the envelope, and I will hit sign. And then I'll hit continue and start, and this will just take me to each place that I need to sign. So I'll just click on the signatures, and then when I am done, I'll hit finish. So that means you've signed everything as the agent. And then your client will receive the email where they can sign all of the forms as well. And then now when it takes me back into my envelopes tab, it will say waiting for others, because we are waiting for the seller to sign them. So I'm going to go sign those quickly in my email. Okay, so I paused the recording so I could go sign those really quickly. And then now, if I refresh my screen, should say completed. And then remember, this automatically is sending the client a copy of everything they've signed. So I already have a copy in my email of all of the documents with all of the signatures from everyone in the envelope. So those are completed. So I'll go back to the Documents tab. And then here you'll see I now have my signed versions as well as my originals. So just like before, I'm going to archive those originals now, as well as that certification, just to keep the room cleaned up. Again, if this doesn't bother you, then you don't have to do this part. I just find it helpful, and based on conversations with a lot of agents, they seem to prefer to do that as well. So I have all my documents in here now, and they are signed. So at this point, you are ready to submit your file to review for the office. You have everything you need. Of course, if you need assistance with that, I have a separate video on my YouTube channel for how to submit a listing file, a contract file, and a closing file. So feel free to check those out. But that is your DocuSign Basics. So everything you need to get started with a transaction. So feel free to check out the other DocuSign videos on the DocuSign playlist of my YouTube channel.